All right, man. This the continuation of what I was reading. What up, though? I'm gonna go ahead and hop straight back into it. In 1619, a Dutch man of war arrived on the Virginia coast carrying African slaves for the African market. I already showed you, man. If you go and look at my earlier videos, I showed you the African slaves were either Moors who were doing the slave trading or the African Jews. I'm telling you straight up, man. Judah was oppressed with Israel. I showed you in earlier videos. You better check and peep them out. But let's continue. Over a period of some 100 years between the 1650 and 1750, the fact American slavery began to change from the tawny Indian to the blackamoor African. You see what I'm talking about? You see what I'm talking about? The unsuitably of the Native American for their labor-intensive agriculture practices, their susceptibility to European diseases, the proximity of avenues of escape for Native Americans, so they can really escape somewhere anywhere, and the lucrative nature of the African slave trade, I led to transition to an African-based institution of slavery. In spite of later tendency in southern United States to differentiate the African slaves from the Indian, I did not, man. This is what I've been talking about the whole time, man. They didn't differentiate, and, and African slavery was in actuality imposed on top of the pre-existing system of Indian slavery. In North America, the two never diverged as distinctive institutions. During this period of transition, Africans and Native Americans shared the common experience of enslavement. In addition to working together in the fields, they lived together in communal living quarters, began to produce collective recipes for food and herbal remedies, shared myths and legends, ultimately intermarried apart from their collective. and That's why in the New Roots, man, when he was talking about jumping the broom, none of this, that's no African slave. He was saying that didn't come from Africa jumping the broom, man. But let me continue. Share myths and ultimately intermarried. Apart from their collective exploitation at the hands of colonial slavery, Africans and Native Americans possess similar worldviews rooted in the historic relationship to the subtropical coastlands of the Middle Atlantic. That makes sense. The Africans, so-called Africans we see today, do they have any relationship with some of the things? I mean, minimal. Let me continue. Considering historic circumstances, environmental associate, environmental associations, and socio-cultural affiliations, the relationships among African Americans and Native Americans was much more extensive and enduring than most observers acknowledge. The intermarriage of Africans and Native Americans was facilitated by the disproportionate numbers of African male slaves to females, 3 to 1. So there were more African males than females. And the decimation of Native American males by disease, enslavement, and prolonged war against the colonists. So there was more Indian women than it was men in slavery, and there was more African men. Man, you see what they did? Do you understand the breeding farms now? Do you understand the breeding farms? But let's continue. During the uh, intertribal wars encouraged by the English in order to produce slaves, the largest majority of those enslaved were women and children. And go back and look at my earlier videos during the Indian slave catalogs. In accordance with the historic patterns of warfare among Native Americans, therefore, the largest numbers of Native American slaves in the early Southeast were women. They took the women. Now you understand what a mulatto is? Let's continue. There were as much as 3 to 5 times more Native American women than men enslaved. Slave owners often desired African men to work the fields paired with Native American women and also to work the fields as well as help around the house. John Norris, a South Carolina planter, estimated the cost of setting up a plantation. Man, you see what I'm talking about? So there were Negro males in the field and Indian women out there. What's the difference? Let's continue. And promise 15 good Negro men at 45 pounds each, 675 pounds items, 15 Indian women to work in the field at 18 pounds each comes to 270 pounds. The Indian women as cooks for slaves and other household businesses. So if the Indian women were cooking the food, and we eat this so-called soul food today, and our women are eating this cooking this soul food, and these were Indian women being slaves. Does it make sense now? Does it make sense? When they talking about niggas love chicken, man, it was the Indians that loved chicken. They loved it so much that they wore chicken feathers, crowns of chicken. I'm gonna continue, man. Historian J. Leach Wright suggests that the presence of so many women slaves from the southeastern Indian nations where matrilineal kinship was the norm helps to explain the prominent role of women in slave culture. As Native American societies in the Southeast were primarily matrilineal, African males who married Native American women often became members of the wife's clan and citizens of the respective nation. As relationships grew, the lines of racial distinction began to blur, and the evolution of red black people began to pursue its own course. Many of the people known as slaves, free people of color, Africans, or Indians, were most often the products of an integrating culture. Okay. I can see myself in that because I'm dark red. I'm literally dark red, literally dark red, and close to light brown and yellow in some of my lighter parts. But let it continue. Uh, okay, listen. Some aspects of African American culture, including handcrafts, music, and folklore, may be Native American rather than African origin. The cultures of Africans and Native intertwine in complex ways in early Southeast. The material culture, like social organization, often reflected the blending of these two. So you telling me Lil Bootsy, Master P, Trick Daddy is Indian music? So you telling me that West Coast flute, they that music, right, that Indian flute is Indian music? So you telling me hip hop and rap is Indian music more than African music? Where the African instruments, did they bring African instruments across the seas with them? Man, all right, man. I'm gonna go ahead and, what was I at? A native Southeast permanent. Okay, I read that, man. I'm gonna come back, man. I'm gonna hit you with some more. I'm gonna upload this and hit you with some more. I'm clearing the lines, man. I'm showing you there's no borders between us.